Belts on coaches, children travelling by coach to school are still at risk. That's at 6:40.
And 10 to 7, Pierce Brosnan gives us all the behind-the-scenes gossip from the latest Bond movie. It's not here, though. It's not actually
Time
here.
for a quick look at the weather, though. Now, 4 years ago, 12 children and their teacher died in a crash on the M40. They were on their way home after a school trip to London. Their teacher was driving them, and the coach they were in didn't have any seatbelts. Not long after that tragedy, new legislation was introduced, which means that every coach built in the last 10 years has to be fitted with seatbelts. So you might think our children are now safe. Well, it appears you'd be wrong. Some councils are using coaches up to 20 years old, and only 4 out of 50 councils we contacted insist on seatbelts in their school coaches. Those 4 councils are Surrey, Cumbria, Hereford and Worcester and Staffordshire. But seatbelts aren't the only issue when it comes to safety. A GMTV investigation has revealed that many local authorities are continuing to put children's lives at risk. How? Well, Alan Fisher has more on this story. Good morning, Alan.
Morning, Duncan.
Well, as well as the seatbelts, how are children's lives being put at risk?
Well, they are being put at risk. We're here at Epsom Coaches in Surrey this morning. This is one of the coaches that will be taking hundreds of school children to school this morning, and the ones in Surrey will be safe because this is a very new coach, just a couple of years old, and it is also fitted, as you can see here, with state-of-the-art seatbelts across the lap, and that improves safety. But not all coaches are as new as this or have seatbelts too. The big problem is that coaches are old, so the maintenance is poor, and really people are being put at risk, particularly school children on their way to school. Now, a special GMTV investigation has identified one company with an appalling safety record, and of course if we can find one, the question must be, how many more are there across the country? Jackie's Coaches, based in Gloucester, appeared before a public inquiry only a week before we took these pictures. Coaches used to carry school children were found to have forged signatures on up to 15 maintenance records, and 4 of the coaches found to have defects, including faulty steering. A braking problem on one of the coaches was considered so serious it was ordered off the road. The company was told to stop trading for 2 weeks, but alarmingly for parents, not until the start of the Christmas school holidays, when there's no money to be made from doing school runs. GMTV has also established that Jackie's appeared before the authorities last year. It was found then that these same vehicles had between them a catalogue of problems: a blocked exit, a cracked wheel, faulty steering and a fuel leak. The company's coaches used to take children to school are up to 18 years old. We've traced their history and found that one of its vehicles suffered fire damage 6 years ago and was described by a previous owner as an old wreck. When we attempted to talk to Jackie's about its safety record, our team was threatened by a man with a plank of wood and chased out of its yard. Gloucestershire County Council issued this statement. The council cooperates fully in addressing the legal requirements for the safety of school transport. In investigating Jackie's Coaches, traffic commissioners found no evidence to support immediate suspension of their operating licence. The County Council has no additional evidence to warrant termination of their contract at the present time. Well, there's a frightening case study for you. Charles Pedrick is involved in Belt Up School Children, BUSK, an organisation that tries to improve safety for children going to school. Charles, obviously seatbelts are important. You think they're very important, but surely they're pointless if the coaches that the children are travelling in are so old that they're at risk because of that.
Well, Alan, you're quite right. I mean, the thing is that over the years that I've been involved in this, since Pat Harris and her husband started this organisation, I was involved because I was so concerned about the very old coaches used to transport my children in the primary school where they go to school. You're absolutely right. There seems little point in fitting safety belts if, in fact, the coach is so rotten and so old and corroded that if there was an accident, the whole thing would just completely crunch up like a cardboard box.
Should the government then take action and say, right, if you're transporting children, you can have coaches that are more than 5 years old, and every one of them should be like this with seatbelts?
Well, looking around this amazing place today, I mean, it is like another planet, isn't it? I mean, it's every coach is well maintained, it's obviously new. Sadly, we don't get that very often for our own children. It is a bit sad to think we can put a man on the moon, and yet all we're asking for is our children to be safely transported from A to B.
Are we being over-dramatic here, Charles, or are we putting children's life at risk because we won't take the necessary steps?
Well, I think that BUSK has done quite a lot of research on this, and one of the things we have not got the message across as an organisation is that, in fact, it's not just about safety belts. BUSK, as you know, stands for Belt Up School Kids. but it is all about the safety. There's little point in having a safety belt if the wheel falls off. We had this last week.
Do you think the government needs now to take urgent action before there is a major tragedy?
Well, it must, because in fact his coaches built before October 1988 should not be used for transporting our children. They're unsafe, the government knows it, we've proved it, and it must stop.
Charles, thanks very much
Okay.
indeed. If you're concerned about the coach that your child is travelling in, the best thing to do is get in touch with the headmaster at the school and the local council and demand to know how old the coach is, what safety measures are taken, and make sure your child is safe as they go to school this morning.
Alan, thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning.
It's 6:43 in the moment, the news, weather and travel where you are.
Still to come on the News Hour on GMTV, Aston Villa manager Brian